right. I am the Excite. Are you the Excite?
I'm the Excite, but I'm always Excite, so I guess it's
It's
norm
a
for
good,
me.
it's a good thing to be Excite because we have a brand new episode of the Tribunal to share with everybody
Oh,
today.
oh shit, my phone. Sorry.
You know,
Sorry.
sometimes,
Sorry.
maybe,
My bad.
just maybe,
My bad. I
we'll get
had it
the handle of
silent.
this tech thing. We'll get the handle of this thing one of
We
these
will.
days. Just
One
because
of
your
them.
phone ringer's on silent doesn't
Doesn't mean that my
mean
video
audio
was. That's
is
okay. We're done now. It's good.
It's
The
okay.
Tribunal, Sunday. We're here. Hi, y'all.
I don't know that I want to let it go,
Calm
but
it
I
down.
will. All
Calm
right.
it down. I'm
We're
human.
all right.
I am heir to prone to heir to prone. Weird day. Weird day.
I'm gonna drink my water. It's fine.
Yep. But anyway, it's
But I'm
Sunday. We're
excited.
here.
It's Sunday. We're here, and we've got hopefully, a fun topic to talk about today. And I'm excited to have some conversation around this one because, in all honesty, I think the topic that we picked for today was like one of the first ones that like I threw out as an idea of if we're going to do Black Compat and we're going to have a podcast where we talk about diversity and inclusion and representation, from our perspective as Black women, and really try to focus in on representation for people of color and for women and all other voices that exist. Like, this is one of the topics where I was like, I think this would be a really good one to start off with, just to get people kind of thinking differently about something that within at least the gaming community, I would say a lot of people are knowledgeable about.
I think this was something that when we were still doing Esh, like I think we kind of thought about it around then, but we just couldn't see how that would fit because of the seriousness of the topic and where that would have gone. So we
Right.
just kind of never brought that to the forefront. But I think we thought about it back then too.
Hit here and there as we talked about the game, and I think we even brought some pieces up when we tried to do a let's play audio version where you played, which was it? Was it Uncharted 3?
Did I do Uncharted? Did I do an Uncharted? Because I know at one point I played. Didn't I play some Red Dead
You did some Red Dead.
once? I think.
Red Dead. We tried Red Dead, God of War, and something
Else.
and that's why I was thinking it was Uncharted, because I distinctly, for whatever reason, we were talking about Chloe's butt a lot,
Yeah, I think you're right.
and that's why
And her duck walk.
and her duck walk. So maybe it was two. It was two then, because
I think
she's
you're
more
right.
heavily where you actually get to play her in that one.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I think that, yeah, because there was only three that we attempted, and after that one, which that one was the funniest, we're just
Well,
gonna let this go. It doesn't work on the audio. It doesn't work.
No, it's something that needed to be brought visually so you could see
So we're gonna just leave this alone until we figure out how we're gonna
how to do it.
actual video let's plays, because we are not storytellers enough. We got too ingrained in playing the game, which really doesn't work when you can't see the game.
Right. It's like, imagine in your mind that you can see what I'm playing right now.
Right.
And then you would absolutely get every joke that I'm making.
And so I think because you were playing the game, I was trying to describe like what you were looking at and what the environments were. I should never do audiobook reading. That just did not work.
I actually thought about doing it for a bit, but I don't read naturally well when I read out loud. It's very jointed and staccato and not pleasant.
Right.
So don't see that happening anytime soon. But I mean, that's not what we're here to talk about today.
No, but we are here to talk about Uncharted. So I want to set some ground rules as to what we're going to be talking about today and how we're going to talk about it, because everybody has opinions. And if you're in the chat and you're watching this live, we definitely want to hear your thoughts about this. This is definitely a conversation that we want to have. And it's the first of many conversations to be had. But changing the narrative, our thoughts behind it, and I'm going to raise my hand and say like my major thoughts, because this is kind of my baby as far as the topics that we've flushed out for this channel, is that I really wanted to focus on if you look at a game, either a specific individual game or you look at a franchise game, and for the most part, many of the narrative games and many of the big franchise games, their main protagonist is cis white male.
Yep.
And nothing against the cis white males.
No. Not a huge problem. We like you. Hey.
We got room for everybody. Always,
Right.
never or. But my thought was, if you look at those franchises of games that the lead is cis white male, if you were to change that to anything else or any combination of anything else, would that change the story? Yes, no, something in between. If it did, why? And would that change be something that could be welcomed in the community, embraced in the community, and be just as successful? And if so, shouldn't we then have something like that so that more people
Can feel represented.
can feel represented? So that's
Hmm.
the idea of changing the narrative, is to have the conversation, to talk through all of those things. And if we get to a place at the end of the conversation, then we're like, yes, it still is just as powerful. It will build just as big a community and loyal fan base. It will still be as epic, touching, resonate with people, all those wonderful things. Then shouldn't we ask for something like that so that other folks can also see themselves as the hero as well? Then we can change the narrative.
I
So
like the idea.
that's the idea.
Good idea, us.
Yeah, go us, high
Go
five.
us, a high five.
So let's talk about Uncharted as the first one to go through. Part of the reason why I wanted to pick Uncharted is because it is, one, a game that, regardless of what console side of the war you're on, and even if you're not a console game player, you're aware of Uncharted in some way. Like Nathan Drake is a running joke, Nathan Drake, running joke throughout the gaming community. So people are aware. You've seen hindrances of it. Not only that, but you've also, probably heard about the talk that's been going on for years and years and years about how they've been trying to get a movie made, not using the right Nathan, because Fillion was right there at the prime of when they wanted to do this.
Yep. I don't know. I think Nathan
I said at the
Fillion.
prime that they wanted to do it. Not now. Now, no.
No, nope,
Now,
not now.
not now.
Nope. You had to get him. You had to get him before Castle.
You really had
You had to get him before Castle, because then he kind of. Granted, still love me some Nathan Fillion, but if they could have gotten
Nathan Fillion,
if they got Nathan Fillion from Firefly.
Oh yeah,
Hell yeah.
done deal.
Chef's kiss.
Just done deal.
I bless that. Not that I'm religious.
But, they've been going through all the conversations, and then they were looking at Mark Wahlberg, and now it's not so many revisions. Hold on. They were looking at so many revisions and things like that now it's gone. Oh, yeah, okay. The Rookie, too. What's up, Stets? Thanks for joining us. The Rookie. Yes. But now it's gone through so many revisions and moved past it that now they're talking about focusing on young Drake and Mark Wahlberg being Sully, Tom Holland being young Nathan.
I do like me some Tom Holland.
I do like me some Tom Holland. And
I do like me some as Sully. See, I don't know, because Mark Wahlberg still seems so strongly Bostonian to me. And Sully doesn't come off Bostonian to me.
I've never heard Mark Wahlberg in a movie where his Bostonian accent didn't come through at some point in time.
Aesthetically, I definitely think he could pull it, but then his mouth would open and then he would break the fourth wall for me. And I'd be like, tell my mother, say hello to your mother for me, all right? Like I would
I,
expect that to come out of his mouth at some point in the movie and it would just break me.
my thing is that it's going to be very difficult for me when the movie comes to pass if it's not an animated thing, because Richard McGonagall is Sully to me. Like, I
Yeah,
think
he
that you can, and I don't have a problem with putting a different actor in as Nathan Drake, because in all honesty, for me, throughout the Uncharted series, I always just thought of Nathan Drake as Indiana Jones.
isn't it weird that I feel like Nathan Drake is kind of like Batman? Like it's a moniker, it's not a person. Like, is
Yeah,
that weird?
yeah. That's kind of like how
Like,
I
I now pass on the
they
Nathan
work.
Drake to you, and now you are the Nathan Drake, and now you must go and get
So,
treasure.
or the Dread Pirate Roberts. Like it
Right.
does, kind of feel like
It's a position, not a person.
right. But somehow, and I don't know if it's just because of the gravitas in his voice, or also, just how much I know of Richard's career. To me, Sully is that voice more so than the visual.
Well, I think the voice tells you, oh, this man has lived. He has had adventures in his own time. Like he's right. He's seasoned. You can hear it.
Yeah,
And I think you could put that season on any vessel
yeah.
and be able to sell it.
It's
Is
like
what I think is what you're getting
Bobo.
at.
It makes everything better. You know what I
Hell
mean?
yeah, Adobo.
Um, but I don't know, just because I haven't seen it yet on a Mark bringing that same thing to
I
the
mean, I
movie.
think he would definitely bring something interesting to the
Agreed.
role, but
Agreed.
I don't know if I'd buy it.
I don't know that I can disconnect my disbelief and just immerse in it, but we'll have to see. But
Hey,
when you think about the franchise is more than just a couple of games. So this
that's
is a
true.
very big narrative that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And it is a very big narrative that, I think Naughty Dog did a really good job from the first game, which I would say, out of the four in the core franchise, which today we're going to talk about core franchise, and we're also going to talk about Lost Legacy, which was a spin-off experience. In the core franchise, I think that Naughty Dog did a really good job of trying to balance the character and the narrative all the way through the game. And what I mean by that is it wasn't just Nate and Sully. You also had Elena.
Yep.
And Elena, I think, was a very well written character in that she was smart. She wasn't a damsel in distress. She could actually hold her own with a pistol. Many times she was a character that actually gave you insight on, like, instead of having to wait for the tip hint thing to pop up, Elena would be like, what about over here? Which sometimes I would get really annoying because I'm like, what are you looking at, woman? Um,
You mean how I feel when I'm playing Last of Us Part 2 and Dina's like, "Hey, let's use this." And I'm like, "Where are you?"
yes. Yes, that exactly. Like, what are you looking at? Why is my camera not going to you when you say these things? But
It makes me feel like the protagonist is being an asshole and is actively not listening to their sidekick. It's like if I knew where you were, I'd be looking at you, but I clearly don't. So, yeah, I'm clearly the asshole in this situation. I'm sorry.
right, right. But I think that Uncharted really does provide a fertile ground with a very good narrative. And I think part of the reason why it is so revered is because the characters were more than two dimensional across the board. And that's what made them really interesting. So I'm going to switch over and start showing some of the visuals here. Hopefully everything works the way that I want it to. But when you look at, the game and you're seeing how all of these characters are more than just
Pixels on a screen.
pixels on a screen. The way that certain people have scars and the way that certain people carry themselves, and not every woman, when you look at the way that Nadine is built versus the way that Chloe is built versus the way that Elena is built, they're obviously not the same model. It's not the same assets reused. I think that, that's just really indicative that, Naughty Dog has done a really good job of trying to create real characters, to try and create a deep story. But still, your core relationships are how everyone relates with Nathan and how Nathan relates with everyone in the world, right?
I mean,
And
and
so,
if you really boil it down, it's how they all interact with you as Nathan. If you
right,
really want to be kind of meta about it.
right. Well, let's be meta because
Sure, why not?
right? So when you think about the core narrative, right? The story is about Nathan, and we learn over the full 4-game series. So if you haven't played all the games, I'm just going to say now, apologies, spoiler warning, because we're to tell the whole
I'm glad
story.
it's not me anymore. I'm glad I've grown
Yeah,
out of spoilerlicious.
yeah. Well, yes, you
In my own way,
in
anyway.
your own way. In your own way. We are going to spoil the story, but I don't think that it will take away from like any gameplay and you're wanting to get through it. But the core story, as we learn over the course of the 4 games, which Naughty Dog kind of releases backwards, we finally get the full story of Nathan Drake in the final game. Is that, we learn that he has a brother,
Yep.
that he lost his parents early on, his mother through tragic disease, but they instilled in his brother and in himself, this vast amount of knowledge and natural curiosity. And because they had to survive on their own, and some bad things happened that forced them to think that they couldn't do it necessarily the up and right way, they resorted to,
The hustle.
yes, the hustle around historical treasure. But at the core of it, they're thieves.
They're thieves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sully comes in as a father figure early on, shortly after, if you play all the games, you realize that Sam's busted Nate out of the children's
Boys' school,
boys'
juvie,
school,
detention center area
the
thing.
rehabilitation areas, whatever you want to call it, and has left him alone in, where were they, Cartagena?
I think so.
Yeah, I think there is Cartagena. And Sully then takes him under his wing, provides for the kid, okay, but teaches him how to really be a thief going after these antiquities, right?
Like, hey, if you're gonna do this, let's develop your skill set here, kid.
Mm-hmm. And so then you go on in the game, going to Shambhala, going after literally Sir Francis Drake's legend, eventually finding Libertalia in one. But ultimately, the Uncharted series is a game about a thief. So I guess the first piece of all of our conversation starts with, how does the narrative change if this story about a lovable thief, because again, he is out to find these antiquities so that he and Sully ultimately can make money off of them. Okay, he doesn't get to the doing the good hire good guy thing
Until later, right? At the beginning,
until
it's
later,
very much about
or not at all, because they blew up Shambhala. Like there was nothing that they were able to bring back, right? So how does the narrative change if this lovable thief action adventure title, if the lead isn't a cis white dude?
So this is actually really interesting because I've actually been thinking a lot about this since we decided we were going to do this as a topic, because I actually feel like the big core of this would shift if Nathan Drake weren't Nathan Drake. If this was the tale of a female thief, Um, I feel like she probably wouldn't be. I don't think they would portray her as, witty and sly, and like I think she'd be very meticulous. Like I feel like writers really have a hard time writing women, since a lot of writers who do this, and I mean there are some who are women, but I think it's a lot easier to write for a man because there's a lot of things that men in narratives seem to kind of have built-in stats to allow them to, like, for you to stretch your imagination for, like, hey, yeah, this completely good looking man who's relatively fit, like, could completely and utterly be okay with not having any type of, secure plan in life, and will just spitball it and will land on his feet and be okay. Most women that I know have plans, have rigorous plans, and I think they have a hard time trying to put that carefree attitude in a woman without it coming off disingenuous, maybe. So I honestly feel like the Nathan Drake female equivalent would actually be a little bit more. I think she'd be a little bit more cold. I think she'd be a little bit more direct, and I actually think her encounter with the Sully archetype, which I still think Sully in this case would still be a dude. I think that parental relationship could still work with Sully still being Sully. But I feel like she'd be trying to pull off this very elegant, meticulous type of heist and would almost get away with it. And then Sully would undermine it. Just to be like, ooh, you were so close. And then like there'd be like this competitive, well, this cat and mouse game between Sully and this Nathan female archetype. So like I think the framing would be completely different. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it could be done, it could be interesting. Um, and like I would love to see a more carefree, balls to the walls, pardon the pun here, female, Nathan Drake counterpart. Just I think people wouldn't find that genuine because I don't know too many people who could be like, "Oh yeah, I know a girl who's like that." Like naturally. And I'm not saying they're not out there. Like I am more than sure that they are. But I don't think in stories people believe that. But it's very believable when you put a male organ on it. It just seems more plausible. you
Well,
know?
Sets threw out in chat and said there are a ton of tropes around male protagonists and their testosterone. It's also easier to write men in adventure games by just following the tropes. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. And I think it's what we're comfortable with seeing because we commonly see it, right?
Right.
When
Right.
you start running down the list, when I said that, I kind of, whenever I played an Uncharted game, for me, I didn't as eloquently put it as you did, but
Oh, thanks.
Nathan Drake was a mantle, and so I always was just like, it's like an Indiana Jones ripoff, which is like a this ripoff, which is like a this like it
Well,
is
I
a
mean,
type of story that
well,
I
I
know,
mean,
like
you
a
make a great
whole.
point because I mean, before Nathan Drake, we kind of had a female in this position. We had Laura Croft. Now, here's the thing about that, and granted, I'm not talking about current Laura Croft. Like, I'm not. I'm
Are you
talking
gonna say
about.
her name like differently every time you say it?
I'm gonna. Yep, every time
Okay,
Laura, Lara, but I'm talking old school, right? Like here you
original
have,
creator.
here you
Everyone
have,
was like Drake was like female Lara Croft.
Well, I mean, like everyone was making that, but there's a difference because one, she comes from wealth. She had a mansion in that first game where she's doing like gymnastics, getting ready for like a meticulously planned trip. See where I'm going with that? So, I mean, they're not the same at all
Well, I
because
want to dig into this. I really want to dig into this because I thought about that particular thing a lot, and you touch on it really well. In that
thanks.
there are major differences. You're welcome. Between Lara Croft and Nathan Drake, almost in that I feel like Naughty Dog was going out of their way to say that this character is not like this character that already existed because Tomb Raider existed long, long, long,
Before
long,
Uncharted.
long before Uncharted ever existed. But with Lara Croft, you have an aristocrat. Her
Right.
parents were Lord and Lady Croft.
Right.
So not just that she came from money, she is of the
He's
aristocracy.
of the blue blood.
Okay. And that is a major thing. And I always had issue and very early on would have conversations with people that I felt like the only way gamers at the time when Tomb Raider came out could be okay with a well endowed female lead character that
Oh, you
was
mean those hard triangle polygons on her frontal?
don't be mad at her polys, okay? It was the
They were
best
sharp. They
technology
could
that we
cut.
had,
They could hurt. She
okay?
could stab. She could have stabbed wolves with her bosoms, let alone her shoot them with guns.
It was the technology at the time.
I know.
But the reason that I felt like it was okay and she was embraced as a lead character and people were like, oh, I can believe it. It's because you had to make her ridiculously rich.
Yep.
Okay, had to make the character this unattainable character for me to go, yeah, I can turn off, my disbelief because this is absolutely a fantasy. Because why on earth would the daughter of a lord and a lady end off going to Egypt to raid some tombs and fight mummies? Like,
I
let's do
mean, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, if I were a
Batman.
super aristocrat and had so much money, like I would. Well, not now because of Corona, but like if there was no like virus out there killing people, I would go to Egypt. Like, I wouldn't steal stuff from tombs because curses and mummies and stuff. But like, I would be flaunting my wealth everywhere. I'd be so annoying about it.
But I do think that it's very interesting if you go down the list between these two characters because people have often said, "Hey, you don't need a female Nathan Drake. You already had it in Tomb Raider, and so actually Nathan Drake is just a female Lara Croft."
No,
Not because
no.
their beginnings are very different. Nathan Drake, I feel like, is written so that from the get go you will actually like his character.
Well, I mean, he's relatable because here he is, an urchin, an orphan, an urchin on the street trying to get by. Also, just happens to have a lot of knowledge with history, like actually really likes it and seems to be really engaged. But like, we have all been that kid who's been like, oh man, I really like this thing and I'm really engrossed in this thing. And what can I do to like enhance my love of X thing? Granted, his turned into, I want to steal the compass or the sextant. Whereas some people like, I want to go take the library book out for 2 more weeks than I'm allowed to. Like they're far enough apart, but you can see the relation in the red string of freight between those. So like you can buy into that, you know, into him more than being, oh, I'm this really rich aristocrat who doesn't have a care in the world, but I have this sense of adventure. Really? Would you really have that sense of adventure if your whole life you've had everything you could ever want? Like, I have a hard time believing that. Granted, I'm not rich, so I don't know what that's like. If I were, I'd be like, there's no need for me to go out because I could probably hire somebody to go get that stuff for me if I really wanted it. Right? No, I'm
Well,
sorry. I'm being real here.
do
I'm not
you?
gonna
I'm
jump
not
from no
saying,
tree. I could pay
no.
someone to jump from the tree.
Why? First of all, why are we in the tree?
Well, I
Anyway,
mean,
back to the
maybe there's a clue in the tree, and I can't climb trees, so I'm gonna pay someone who is
conversation.
acrobatic to go jump up in the trees.
I would just have somebody bring the tree down. But
I mean,
back
all
to the
right, yeah, that's a better idea.
get back to the conversation, right? I think and feel that Nathan is written to be a character that you like and therefore will invest in. And I feel like before the Tomb Raider reboot, that's not the case with Lara
I
Croft.
also agree with that.
Lara Croft is written as a character that you're really just supposed to be infatuated with.
I mean, you can't blame people. Look at her.
No, I'm not. I'm not. But I'm saying that's how she's designed.
Right.
You know, I
I
don't
mean,
remember.
are you trying to say that Nathan isn't desirable?
No, he is, but it's
There's
done
a
in
difference.
different ways.
You could probably get Nathan at a bar after a couple of drinks. You're never going to encounter Lara in real life. She gonna be at those parties that you ain't getting into.
I wouldn't even say that that's the level. Where I'm at is when you look at the two characters before the reboot of Tomb Raider, right?
Mm-hmm.
The initial drive, like, it's not until further way into the trilogy that you get any sorts of sense of why Lara is doing any of this, right? Like, it's just, oh, she's just always like,
She just really likes treasure, guys. I just like treasure, and I have money, and I have all this time.
I wouldn't even go there, but like,
Can you tell I have
I
issues
can
with
tell that
old
you
old
have
time
issues.
Laura?
Yes, I do. And I don't want to disrespect that. I'm just trying
I
to get all
appreciate
the way
that.
through
Thank
my
you.
thought. So you don't get really, I feel like, until the reboot, any sense of what moved Lara into that space to begin with. Whereas you get very early on, even in the first game, these touches of, oh, obviously, this father and son duo, which we learn aren't actually father and son, but that's how they act. This is like a family affair. And so automatically, on a personal level, you have an emotionally different connection to the characters.
You get a strong you get sprinklings of the central theme throughout all of the games. Naughty
Well,
Dog is really great about that.
where I'm trying to get to is that character was crafted with care and specifically designed for you to have an emotional connection with him. That's why he's plucky, the one-liners. You get Nolan North to design to be the voice of the character, so that you have, this great comedic timing. And so it's designed to be a character. And as long as it hits, you'll fall in love with it. But Lara Croft is something completely different. So coming and focusing on all those things that Nathan is designed to be, does that change if Nathan is Natalia? Before we even put any shade on it, does that change if Nathan is Natalia?
I actually kind of think so because I think the world would treat her differently. I think I don't think that um a lot of the things that Nathan gets away with, and I'm using air quotes there, the situations Nathan finds himself in, I do not think Natalia, without any shade applied, would have the same opportunities to fall into those situations. Just to make it believable in a narrative sense, that feels kind of hard for me
Okay.
because having Nathan show up at, I think in the last one he ends up at one of the auctions where he's trying to like swipe something, like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I could totally come in as a maitre d, no one's gonna think twice. I don't think Natalia would have those same those affordabilities, not that that's a word, but like I think her instances would be different, so the narrative would shape differently based on that. Because here, if you had a plucky, takes no shit attitude girl, woman, not girl, woman, be like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna try to get up into this auction. Well, how? Like, you can't just put on a blazer, slick your hair back, and be okay. Like, I think the expectation would be, oh, I have to like sex pot in here, and like, who am I gonna like lean up onto? Like, I think there's this weird, the minute you make a female a character, there has to be this demure, soft damsel, like, oh no, how am I gonna get into this thing? I need this man to come and do this thing for me so I can go do the thing I want to do. I think they like to put that filter on, and that makes it so much harder to make female protagonists relatable to the masses. So I think female alone would make it hard, and then God forbid we slap a shade on there, you
Oh, we're
know.
gonna slap a shade on there. That's going to be part of the
Right,
conversation.
it's part of the conversation. It would make that exponentially harder, which we'll talk about later. But I think the narrative would shift. I don't think it would completely change it, but I think a lot of the situations would not hit the same beats that they do for Nathan.
Okay. So picking up on that, because that's actually a great segue, because I do think absolutely the narrative has to shift. What I want to get into is, does the core canon have to change? And if so, why? At a top level, I say no, the core canon doesn't have to change, but there are some beats that would need to shift and be different. And I do think that there are, some other story pieces that have to shift, right?
Right.
So I'm going to take a path through Uncharted as a whole, games 1, 2, 3, and 4, if Nathan Drake was a black woman.
Okay. Ooh.
I'm going
Ready.
to say that in my pass through, as I share with you my thoughts of Nat Drake,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I am not changing the sex of any of her supporting characters or their existing races, religions, creeds, any of that stuff.
Okay,
So
so
Elena still stays with.
only Nathan Drake is changing.
So only thing that changes is it's Nat Drake, not Nathan Drake. So
Okay.
Sam stays as is. Elena stays as is. Chloe stays as is.
Well, wait, how
Hold
does
on.
Nat's brother stay?
Hold on. Can I actually finish my thought?
Okay.
Okay, I'm just laying the groundwork here. I'm not changing anybody else because I think that it's also unfair to say, okay, just redo the game and make everybody black and that fixes
Well,
everything.
no, that doesn't fix it.
It
That
doesn't at
doesn't fix
all.
it.
And I don't want to just be out here and just like, oh, everybody's out here just saying make everything black, make everybody a woman, and then it's no.
No.
So keeping the canon and keeping the world from my start, everybody stays the same. So now I'm going to walk you through how they all stay the same with Nat Drake involved, and therefore what beats change and what story things may shift, but does it overall change the narrative of the game?
Okay. I'm
Okay.
listening. I'm
All
intrigued to
right.
see where this goes.
So we've already established, right, in the existing canon with Nathan Drake that he and his brother were in an orphanage. So what we have is a relationship between Nat and Sam, where because they were together in this orphanage and they only relied on each other, they thought of each other as brother and sister, but they're actually not blood. But it doesn't matter to them because they've been each other's brother and sister all their lives coming up in the orphanage. Or if you want to take a step back, they had Sam, they tried to have another child, didn't happen. Parents adopted a child, and because they had open hearts, they didn't care, they adopted Nat.
Okay. All right, fine.
Solved.
Okay, sure.
Okay?
Hey.
Everybody else stays the same in the rest of the game. Now, them coming out of the orphanage together, staying with the not adopted, they just relied on each other throughout the orphanage time, I think makes their relationship then a little bit different, but also more strong because it's a family that they choose. So therefore, when you get further along down in the games, knowing that Nat loses Sam early on, and that's what then shapes her keeping kind of relationships at an arm's length, not really trusting everybody because the person that she trusted the one time coming out of the orphanage, she lost them, does make that resonate a little bit more. So that when you get to Uncharted 4 and Sam shows back up, I think it's even more believable that Nat would then drop everything to try and help Sam so that she doesn't lose him again.
I kind of want to interject here because we know because we know in 4, I mean, spoiler alert, spoiler warning, that we know in 4, Sam comes back with less than pure intentions.
Correct. I'm not saying Nate. I'm just saying.
If Nat Drake already has this knot in her stomach about this man, this person, this family who's hurt her before, I don't see her being too gung ho at the beginning to rush in.
You're conflating two things, so let me help you separate them. So in the orphanage, and the reason why Nat feels like Sam is her brother is because that's the only person that was really good to her and she could count on. And when things went tits up, Sam busted her out of the orphanage and they were together and did everything in the world and then went through the same thing, okay, of the heist that went bad. Because remember, at the beginning of the game, we learned that as they were trying to break out of the prison, Sam gets shot. Nate thinks Sam's dead.
Dead. Right.
Same storyline for Nat.
Okay.
Sam is the only one that's Nat's ever been able to feel like has always had my back for the longest time. And then even coming into then Sully took a while to warm up to Sully, but finally didn't. It took years and years and years and started to build those same relationship structures after that point with the Sullys and the Elenas of the world. But still, I feel like I would buy it more that even with all that said and done, there's still like this reason to like keep people at arm's length. Because to me, it never made sense to me for Nathan why he seemed to just be a little disconnected off. Like after he and Elena got together, and then they weren't together. Like in two, and you like have the ring, don't have the ring. Or is it three? Yeah, it's two. Have the ring, don't have the ring, all that kind of stuff. I was just like, why? Like, what?
Well, I
Why?
mean, relationships are tricky, man. Sometimes you think you in it to win it, and sometimes you're not.
I understand relationships are tricky, but I hadn't been given anything up until that point to explain why Nate wouldn't just be like, rah!
Right,
Like,
got it.
I'm gonna hold on to this with like everything that I have in my world. Like they didn't present anything in the game.
Well, he doesn't want to come off as weak and vulnerable, right? So that if he shows any type of weakness or vulnerability or weakness to any particular thing, it doesn't make him less of a man. So therefore, it's like, oh no, I don't need to have you. I just really like you. I'd like you to stay. But like, if you don't, I'm not chasing you because I'm a man. I don't need you. You need me. You need me. And then I think before he's like, actually, no, I do need you.
I say in general, the trope is played out, right?
Yeah,
And
it's blue. They ran that horse till Elmer's.
And I do think that, again, with my Nat Drake, for me, I understand and it resonates with me on at least a little bit different level how much work it was to actually agree to go off into the world with Sullivan. It then makes more sense of why I might be a little bit more aloof and off-putting with Elena. Because yes, I'm still putting Nat with Elena.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
For me, it then makes the whole scene with Chloe and Nat into even more enjoyable.
Mm.
And then it makes the decision that Nat makes of Elena and not Chloe even more interesting. So yes, beats change, but they don't have to completely drop out. I don't feel that you have to completely change the narrative of Uncharted to make Nathan Drake Nat Drake.
Okay.
And I still think that it is a very interesting game. And I still think many of the emotional beats are just as powerful. And I think it makes the epilogue of 4 even more bananas nuts amazing. And I probably would have cried like more than I did, although I did cry. Not gonna lie, I cried at the end of 4.
I mean, yes. Who didn't? I mean, I was preparing for the emotional hit in 3.
But even with all that said, I don't think it happens, and I don't think that studios do it because I don't think that it would have as high sales. Because inherently, I think we're just taught, and I speak of my own biases here, which suck, and I'm trying to work through them. But I think that we sometimes conflate thievery as being very different depending upon what the person committing the thievery looks like. So, Indiana Jones, I'll give you the example.
Thank
Indiana
you.
Jones as Harrison Ford,
yes.
running around the globe, stealing these artifacts,
whipping the air.
Hold on. To sell them and make money at night and during the day teach is very different if he's a black man. Because if you think about a black man running around, thieving out of pyramids and selling that stuff, you think of that story narratively different.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So we think of thieves differently based on how they are visually presented.
I
And
mean,
so
case in point, if you make Nate Nathan Nate female Nate, I bet people would think, oh, she's probably like a cat burglar. She's all like sly and like sex. Like you put her in a box,
I think that that again comes to like tropes, and that's because
right?
going back to what Stetson said is that it's very easy to write men in adventure games, especially when the majority of the voices in the room are men, and that's another reason why I say Nathan Drake is written very differently than Lara Croft, and I think you see a piece of that change when you look at the reboots, right? The way that and I'm not saying that it's 100%. I think that there were some misses in the way that
I
Lara
agree,
Croft was
but I
written.
mean, I definitely saw some significant progress
Absolutely.
in the new Lara.
And that's why I say that there is that distinct difference between early Lara Croft and then from reboot on. From reboot on, I do feel like Lara got more care and was flushed out to be a more character than just Avatar.
Well, I feel that was a marketing move because, like, hey guys, Nate was so personable and everyone really loved that he was like a person. We should like do that to her too.
I would love to say, especially as a marketer, that that was a marketing move. I don't, because I think that the studio wanted to tell a different story
Okay,
and just
perhaps.
figured out how to make marketing come along with it.
Okay. It's like, hey, she's a person. You know who plays these games? People. Let's give her a best friend. Like
That's
let's give her an emotional anchor that she loses that she desperately needs to get back cuz everyone can get on board with that.
also, by the way, I have not lost this. Thank you so much, Yanzer, for the follow. We're so close to our follow goal. I am going to break
Guys,
the
like we're
conversation
like
in
what,
just a
3
second.
away now?
We're
3,
at this point. What are we? No, we're five. We're five
5
away
away.
from hitting our mid goal. It's not the stretch goal, but let's be real. The stretch goal was really big, and I knew that we're going to hit it. But we're 5 away from 50. So if you're watching the channel, if you got friends, have them come through. Give
Tell
us
your
a follow.
friends, tell your wife, follow us here on Twitch.
It doesn't cost you anything to follow. We're not talking subs here. We're talking follows. So just hit that little heart and make us go boop boop boop. Okay, now coming back to the conversation.
Show us some love.
I
So
do
anyway,
think I do think that when you think about the Uncharted franchise as a whole, the core story itself does lend itself to allowing for different voices and leads. Like when you look at all the characters across, I think Naughty Dog has that, right? Because you have Sully and you have Nate and you have Elena, but you also have Chloe and you have Nadine.
yeah, but we got Nadine so late in the game.
Hold on, hold on. We got her though, and she wasn't just a throwaway character. And I think that that's really important to point out because there have been many times in many games that you get the addition of a character that is different, other, and you get
Mm-hmm.
really excited, and they're there for one mission or one side quest, and then bye.
Or in the case of Resident Evil 5, you get Shiva for the entire game until Jill shows back up and then she disappears because Savior White Woman is back, so we don't need you anymore. Thanks. Thanks.
So
Still
I do think it's important. It's important that credit is given where credit is due. Okay.
okay.
There are a lot of things in Uncharted that I think could be better, but I do want to give the Naughty Dog team like one of those because as far as across the game, there are, and it was for me at the time, one of the first times in a triple A core platform, huge, successful franchise that I ever saw a female black character who wasn't a drug addict, who wasn't hypersexualized.
I mean, she was angry though, but she had her reasons.
Look, she had her reasons. I don't have a problem with angry black women. Like I know a lot of people do. I have a problem with like the over angry black woman
Right.
stereotype.
The
But
hyper angry.
the hyper like chibi version. Like no. I get angry. I have opinions. I put it out there. Yeah, I get loud. My head moves. My hands move. My hands moving now, and I'm not even angry. Like
I know. You're
that,
very active today.
that's actually who I am. It's because I've been drinking my vitamins and I got some rest. But I don't have a problem necessarily with an angry character who is black, who is a woman, if she has a good reason to be angry.
Right.
And she does.
She
Okay.
does.
But it was the first time that I recall in a big AAA game that there was a black character that was on the screen more than once who held her own, who wasn't hypersexualized, who was very intelligent and presented in that way, who was just as confident. And even in the scene, at a point at which she lost, it wasn't simply because the white guy was better. He had more luck. And that is very, very rings true with me.
I mean, also, I think and at one point when I think they're in the caves and stuff, and it doesn't look really good. She's like, I'm not putting my men in there. Like,
right.
it's not safe. Like, she actually she backed off because of the safety of her men, her business, her pride
Right.
in her business, not her self pride.
Right. And so I have to say, I have to give credit where credit is due because Nadine is a very well put together character and wasn't just a one off. Okay. Like she appeared multiple times in Uncharted 4. And then, we got Lost Legacy, which was the spinoff. And I do want to, we'll put some time here in a hot
I
second
actually do have a question when we get to Lost Legacy.
on Lost Legacy. But I think that if, again, just to sum up, my Nat Drake, all the way through Uncharted 1, 2, 3, and 4, I think absolutely the story can be just as good, just as intriguing. I mean, for me, absolutely, I would have picked it up. I picked up all of the Uncharted games. It's one of my favorite franchises. And it is because not because the action is great, because there are a lot of times that camera has problems, but hey, when does camera not have problems in an action game? But I did like the writing, and it felt like the characters were really flushed out. The story and the narrative and the set pieces were amazing. And I think the story and the narrative and the set pieces still work. Like at this point, if you have Nat and Elena going through the relationship stuff, figuring it out, finding out, betrayal and not trust of not sharing, those things all are deep, but they're also, I think, more thought provoking if you're seeing that happen between two women have gone through this journey than necessarily, just the storybook guy girl.
Okay.
And personally, me, I'm ready for more stories that are not just the traditional guy girl. I think Nate Drake is just as badass and just as smart. And I think if it was approached today the right way, could absolutely be financially successful. But I don't know yet that the community is at a place where it would embrace it as such. And that's one of the things that, made Uncharted all the Uncharted games, and it had the multiplayer, and then it got to the place where we ended up with this, some people say spin-off game. I say that it is an experience because I put it in the same bucket as the Miles Morales Spider-Man game that's coming out. In that,
You consider that an experience and not a game?
I kind of feel like if I can run through it in under 10 hours,
You should. I don't know if you could. If you can put
I,
hours gamed towards the quality of a game, and I think we actually talked about
hold
this
on, hold on.
extensively on Edge.
Hold on. I'm not talking about quality of game. I'm talking about category. You can
Okay.
have crazy ass quality in a 2 hour game. You can have crazy ass quality in a 5 hour game, Journey.
Love me some Journey.
But Journey is an experience.
Agreed.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So let's not get it twisted because I don't want to say, or I don't want to leave people with the wrong impression. Okay, I think that the Spider-Man game is going to be with Miles Morales is going to be great. If I'm being honest, I do think that it's an experience because if I can run through it in less than 10 hours, not to say that the quality isn't great, not to say that the story isn't great, not to say that the mechanics won't be great.
But what does it make it a game to you? Is what I don't understand.
The place where I categorize something as being a game is really if it requires me to get through the story, it requires a dedication of time, right? Like on console,
Mm.
specifically talking about console, not talking about mobile, not talking about PC. Okay, I'm talking about console release. Now that we have these VR experiences, and since we've created this new category now, like my delimiter is like I would call Beat Saber an experience, not a game.
I agree. That is an experience. Actually, no. I'm gonna sidestep that because
Okay.
I think Beat Saber is like it's in a subcategory of game. It's like a party game. It's a pick up, drop in, drop out, momentary game. But I do not think it is like a I don't know what I'd want to use instead of that, but it's in its own tent. It is a game. Like I could see that at any party, gamer party, like
I'm
Rock
not saying
Band.
that experiences aren't you can't have game experiences, but I'm
But
saying that I would say
I
I would
think I have to disagree with you on that. I think it's going to
and
end up being a game
that's
because
fine.
for
My
you you might be able to get through that game in under 10 hours, but someone else who may not have played the
Mhm.
other Spider-Man game before this one, who might not have played games in a while, it might take them longer. So I don't think we're in a position to
Absolutely.
say what's a game and what
I'm not
isn't a game.
I'm not judging for anybody else. I'm saying for me, I would categorize it, and I do categorize it as an experience. To me,
Okay.
Lost Legacy is an experience. I
Okay.
loved it. I played it like 5 fucking times
Okay.
because I absolutely loved it. But
So
it's
we tangented though, because I want to get to my question with
okay.
Lost
Yeah,
Legacy.
I don't want
So
to lose your
did you
question.
fit? You
We're
did.
moving into Lost Legacy time now. So yeah,
Okay.
drop that
Okay.
question. Let get hot.
Okay. So my question to you in regards to Lost Legacy is: do you think that they could not sell it with Nadine alone, and they had to put Chloe in there to bring that interest into people, to bring people to play it?
So do you want me to answer like emotionally, or do you want me to answer with actually the knowledge that I have?
So actually, give me both, and surprise me with which one you're going to hit me with first.
Okay. I don't believe that it was felt that Nadine could not carry a game. I do think that and I want to make sure I say this the right way. I do think that the Uncharted franchise has proven that solo character all the way through isn't as interesting
Engaging.
and engaging without a second,
Okay.
right? So if you think about the structure of how Uncharted is, it's Nate and Sully.
Until it's
Until
Nate
it's just
and
Nate trying to get back to Sully. And if
right,
it's not Nate and Sully, it's Nate and Elena. And if it's
and
not Nate
then
and Elena, then it's Nate and Chloe. And if it's not Nate and Chloe, then it's Nate and Cutter. And sometimes it's Nate, Cutter, and Chloe and Sully. You know what I mean? So like it is an ensemble structured game.
okay.
So I think that it's always been whoever your lead is, and then they're either straight man or comedic right?
Chloe,
Like,
but in those two, Nadine's clearly the straight man in this, and Chloe had to be the comedic weight.
and Chloe's the lead.
Ooh,
Chloe's the lead. It's about her father's discovery. We start off with,
I know.
right? Like Chloe is the lead, and Nadine is her straight foil.
Even though they're weirdly parallel because they both.
And we learn that, and then they learn that, and
And then
then
they become best friends and they braid each other's hair and they get
they
pizza.
become a unit and they have pizza. Spoiler.
No, I
Sam
think
on the side trying to convince them to do the dumb thing, and they're just like, "We're not having that. Just shut up and eat the pizza and be in the moment."
I think when Lost Legacy first got like announced and put out there,
Mm-hmm.
one, I was just super excited to see that, they did so much with Nadine in 4.
Yep.
I was like, oh, they can't just leave it like this, and they can't just throw some DLC to make this all better. Like, there's so much here. There's so much potential here for there to be more with her.
Mm-hmm.
Please let there be more. And then when it kind of became the Chloe show with a dash of Nadine every once in a while for some like narrative resonance,
Mm-hmm.
like I kind of felt like, and I'm not diminishing Chloe at all. Like, I'm not. Like, I was down for Chloe when she first arrived in the Uncharted series. I was like, great, we have a confident, driven, lead who can match strides with Nathan and has proven several times over, like, this could be my whole thing. Like, I could run this. I'm just not. Like,
Right.
she could snatch that adventure crown from him at any time. Anytime. She's just not about it right now. But the fact that they then put her in the front kind of made me think, okay, in a market perspective, not that I do this for a job, but I'm like, she's a little bit more established than Nadine. Everyone knows who Claudia Black is. A lot of guys really like Claudia Black, and we've heard her across several other games with very strong protagonist adjacent characters. So strategically marketing that made more sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it still kind of hurt because I'm like, I felt like Nadine had a little bit more narrative weight that I think that could have been the focal of this and found a way to weave Chloe in and make her the second. Like,
I think we absolutely do that. It just isn't what happened.
Right.
And so now I'll hit you with the facts of the development of the game. So Lost Legacy was supposed to be a part of Uncharted 4. It was built to be in the game. It was supposed to be.
Why the hell wasn't it?
So
oh my God, why?
Yeah. So that's why I was like, which way do you want me to answer this? Because I'm going to
I'm like butthurt right now.
Really, yeah, butthurt. So
like, my butt is hurting right now, and it's not because of my chair.
And that's also, again, because of the knowledge that I have, I think of it as an experience and not a game, because it was literally levels that were supposed to be in Uncharted 4, and they just realized that the entire gameplay length was just too big, but they had already built it. So there was literally supposed to be this whole segment where you were just off and running as Chloe and Nadine, having this whole other, side piece, and then it was going to come back to...
See, but I would have imagined it's weird.
And Lost Legacy, as it is right now, isn't like what was in the game. But
where would that have fallen in the game? Because I think that would have had to happen before the events of 4.
No. So let me just be very clear. Like, exactly as Lost Legacy is right now is not what was in Uncharted. There was just a section in Uncharted 4 where they had outlined, would this one be this
split? Thank you for the clarification, because I'm like, narratively, it wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
You'd have to have that happen before to establish that they knew each other, but not in the context that it happens in 4 later.
Correct. So there was this section that was going to exist, right, where we pulled away from, and I think it was going to be like, the initial idea was that it was going to be Sam and Claudia.
Chloe. And I need them to get together. They need to hook up. They
started to work out these levels in this section, and they just realized, okay, we have these set pieces, but it adds way too much time to the game. And
guys, we got too much. We're not Rockstar.
Exactly.
We got to dial it back.
And at the end of that, they were like, we're just gonna pull it out of the game because this game is already so big and all those kinds of things. And they went, but we have all this stuff. What could we do with it? And they went, well, one of the characters that we have in this game and we love and we haven't done a lot with is Nadine. And where we leave off in this game, like we don't know where Nadine is because her men have betrayed her. So that's when they put, okay, well, then we could do these pieces because they had a bunch of the set pieces and we could actually bring Chloe and Nadine into this space because, we get to the end of 4. Nathan's hung up the rack.
Yep. He got his own island. He got Elena. He's got his daughter. He ain't looking for any more adventure. He done.
Yeah. Totally stets. Claudia Black does the voice of Chloe. It's good stuff. Yeah. But when we end the game, he's hung it up. He's off on the island with his family. And when everybody says goodbye, Sam gravitates toward Sully. And we know that they go off and do the Sam and Sully show for a little bit before.
Well, now Sam needs a daddy because Nate has had a daddy surrogate for a while and Sam hasn't. Now it's Sam's turn.
Sam gets a little turn, but we learn in the epilogue that even that came to an end because Sully eventually settles in as cranky grandpa and stops smoking stogies and everything, right?
Wow.
So if you read the letter in the kitchen, right? So who does that leave Sam that he could trust, that he knows can do the stuff? It makes sense that it's Sam and Chloe. That's why the whole game of, again,
and I mean, she's attractive too, so I
mean, really, any excuse to use Trey Baker, right? But
right.
That's why for Lost Legacy, even though you play the majority of the game, and it's one of the things that I love, you play the majority of the game as Chloe and Nadine. Chloe only brings in Nadine because she originally started the heist with Sam and he got caught. So Sam is the damsel in distress that Chloe and Nadine are going to save. So again, I mean, where credit is due, but that's what it is. That's the mission.
But that's kind of Sam's archetype, though. He's kind of the reckless, goes in, doesn't fully plan, goes by the seat of his pants, and he's just not as lucky as Nate is.
Right. So again, it's another place where I like to give, credit
where credit's due. Okay.
Because it would have been very easy to make him this suave debonair, I could talk my way out of almost everything kind of thing. But instead, no. No.
No.
Sam's just a smart but bit of a fuck up and has to be saved. And this time, it's by Chloe and Nadine, who doesn't really like him and or trust him. And yet, the way that narrative goes through and how they come along, it comes along. So that's why they went, okay, we're going to do this Sam and Chloe thing, but we're actually going to make Sam the one that's being rescued, and Nadine is brought in, and then they expanded it out, and they put some more levels in, and then they crafted and shared those whole backstories. We don't get any back into Chloe throughout any of the Uncharted series until you play Lost Legacy.
That's right. Nope. She's done a couple of jobs with Nathan, never really discusses what those jobs were.
At all. Right?
Hardly. Okay. You're right.
3, we learned that, she's a great wheelman, but we don't know why.
Also, how often do we actually see her in a car? I think maybe
just the one time driving the van in 3.
Right. So you have Baby Driver and then you don't have Baby Driver do what Baby Driver does.
Right.
What?
So the last piece of, the conversation, right? Because I think that Lost Legacy also proves my point, because if you look at how it sold, it didn't sell nearly as well as any of the Uncharted games. It did well,
but not to the same standard as the flagship.
It didn't get the same marketing push. It did
and why?
All.
Why?
And again, it's because not necessarily because of its leads.
Well, if the lead is Chloe, brand recognition, she's been a part of the. So, like, why
That's what
not?
I'm saying. So again, this is where I come for. Like for this particular game, I'm not. I guess, but I couldn't really start it here because then I would have given everything away. But this is another reason why I consider Lost Legacy to be an experience, and I wouldn't put it in the game category because it was born out of levels that were taken out of a main campaign, and that when it was put together and released, it was treated by its own team as if it was an experience. It was treated like DLC.
Well, don't you think that that might be a thought process that they should address in house? Like, why do they see it as less than and
I
not?
wouldn't necessarily say less than, but I do think that there's a different marketing push behind content that is felt like add-on because core thing released, right? They didn't call it a new IP. It was Uncharted Lost Legacy, right? And so it is a add-on, expansion, DLC, pick whatever vernacular feels best to you, but it's not the core franchise. Do I think that you could have, and absolutely should have a full game, full narrative, whole thing that's not DLC, not expansion, not add on, not afterthought game
Oh my god, I just had the most amazing idea.
that
Like
is
Nadine's
great.
dad had run-ins with Sully, so like she got back.
There's a lot
Oh my god, why am I not a writer?
there's a lot in the Uncharted world that is not tapped, right? It's not
Right.
just, and to your point, Nathan Drake is a moniker. Nathan Drake is not Uncharted. You had all these other characters that are so fulfilled that you can make other games. And I think that's one of the things that Lost Legacy proved is that you can have an Uncharted game and
But not have Nathan
Drake,
Drake be your vessel, be
Nathan
your
Drake is not in the game
right.
at
Do
all.
they I don't remember. Do they even mention Nathan at all?
Yeah, because they
Do
talk.
they fail the Bechdel test?
Okay, but like Nathan Drake is not in the game. Not in the game. And the game is great. The Assad is a bad guy, and you want bad things to happen to him. The game it is an Uncharted game without Nathan Drake, and it is just as quippy, just in different ways. So you can absolutely have the Uncharted universe continue without Nathan Drake, and you can do it with other voices and leads, and it work.
But I think Lost Legacy also kind of uh enhances what I was talking about earlier about how if they were going to make a female Nathan, essentially I think she'd be a Nadine. Like, you know, beyond intelligent, meticulous, driven, strongly like obviously has a strong backstory that makes her driven.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the way that she goes about uh throughout the game is very much what I kind of envision.
Well,
Really.
I'm going to be very literal here. So if you're going to make female Nathan Drake, it's not Nadine because Nadine is super strict and super serious, and Nathan Drake is not that.
I know. But I'm
And
just saying I when I make the jump in my mind, I feel like if you take the core of Nadine and tweak it a bit, that's kind of where my mind goes a bit.
mm-hmm.
Only because
I think you can absolutely. I guess what my question would be is: are you thinking that in stature, physical design, like is that where you're making the connection? Because on paper, if you run down the list of what Nathan Drake is,
I mean I think he's the
there's
polar opposite of
overlap,
Nadine.
right?
They are not the same at all. They're polar
There's a couple
opposites.
of overlaps, but they're polar opposites. So if you're
But I
going
but I
to,
think the point I'm trying to make is
mm-hmm.
most times when you have a female lead in a protagonist position in games,
Mm-hmm.
you get
narrative games,
narrative games.
mm-hmm.
The narrative that they like to give these women, they like to try to make them less feminine, less they like to make them as close to men as possible. like, oh man, she's super bitchy, she's super aggressive, she, like they try to put these identifiers to make the female protagonist more palatable. Oh god. So Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yep, Alloy.
Like, like, yeah, she's a girl, but like
I didn't play
she
this game, so is
so
she
so I
bitchy?
mean, I watched a lot of it because my husband played it, but I mean, like, not that she's like bitch or anything, but like she's got a lot to prove. Like, she's a girl going through this trial to become like part of the tribe, and like everyone's like, she can't really do it, and she's kind of an outcast, and she wasn't really allowed in, and then she becomes like the chosen, and she's meticulous and she's cold and she's, and as she starts getting pieces of the puzzle together, she starts to soften because there's actually like this great theme about identity
Do you
in
need to throw
Horizon
out
Zero Dawn.
Do you need to
Huh?
throw out a spoiler? Do you need to throw out a spoiler?
No, nope, and I'm not going to.
Okay.
But I'm just saying that, like, she's so she's she's cold, and I feel that they do this because if they made her too warm and feely, it would pull the gamer out of the experience of being this badass who has to go and do all of these things. Like, but a guy could just be like, yeah, I'll just do it because whatever. Like, the mental scape is so different. And I think that that's why when you get females in these positions, they either make them completely void of any type of strong feminine characteristics mentally, so that the guys who are playing them can be cool with the fact that they're a chick, and and then at the very end, oh yeah, we'll give you your touchy feely at the end because like clearly it's the story that we're going after, but like we couldn't give it to you at the front because you wouldn't have bought the game if we did. So I mean, I also would also kind of make a small reference to oh, I can't remember the name of it, the one with the mental illness, Setsuna.
Senua's Sacrifice?
I mean, granted, that theme was a totally different thing. It doesn't matter that the character in that's female. I think mental illness is the character in that, and it just happens to be in a female body. So I mean, but once again, like I think that it's really hard to make female protagonists appealing to the gamer base when the majority of the gamer base, and I mean, granted, now I think if you look at the numbers, they're a lot closer now, that maybe we should start shifting that paradigm a little bit, because before it used to be very much like, but it's been creeping. So now what do you do?
It's Pat's creeping. I mean,
It's
just if you want to play the numbers game, it really comes down to do you include mobile gaming and PC gaming? And if you do, I have some very, very sad news for a lot of people.
but I'm just saying
Not
that
going to like what the numbers actually say about who makes up the majority of the community. But
I just
I
think
just
at
want
the
to
end
get
of
to
the
these.
day, a super characteristic, funny guy can be plopped into any type of narrative situation. But for some strange reason, you make that protagonist female, and all of a sudden, oh no, it's really hard to do. We can't do that. I
So
think
I
there's a
want to get
fear.
to a couple of comments because I want to make sure that we don't forget them before
Okay,
because we're getting close on time. But I do think
sorry.
you have it. No, but you do have a really good point, and it is, I believe, it comes from a place of what is comfortable to write because so many times they say you write what you know.
Right.
But that said, that action adventure games are power fantasies, so it's hard to include warmness in protagonists. Like there aren't a lot of men protagonists that I would describe as warm either. Again, tropes. It's just easier to write them as power fantasies, and I don't disagree. I think it is. It absolutely is easier. It takes a lot more work and a lot more time and a lot more effort to do anything other than just the trope power fantasy. But I do think that there's value in doing that work and trying to do more than that. I would call Nathan Drake a warm protagonist. Like, he goes out of his way to be a jokester, delivering the one line.
Well, he's using his comedy as a deflection for the sadness that he's holding, but that's a different story.
That's a different story and different podcast. But I would absolutely put Nathan Drake on the warm side as opposed to, oh, I don't know.
BJ Blazkowicz from Wolfenstein.
Definitely not that.
Granted, in the later games, he starts to warm up.
Yeah, and he supposedly has daughters. I don't know. I didn't play that game either. But like,
he has twin daughters who are going to be, I think, the protagonists of the next game.
You know,
I believe
of the protagonists in a Far Cry game.
Oh, actually, that's a good point. I don't think we've had a female protagonist in a Far Cry. They've always been dudes. And I think they've always been cis white men.
No, I think Primal.
I didn't play it. I don't know.
It's like such a hazy memory, but I think Primal you were a chick. I think.
So the one that underperformed all the other Far Cries was the chick.
Oh, I don't want to put that on the chick. Like, Far Cry Primal, I don't think was very well thought out.
Maybe
like,
not.
We need a Far Cry, and like Horizon Zero Dawn's out there. People like animals and shooting. Let's do that. And then like, oh damn it was mecha animals and shooting. Our bad. Whoops.
So I mean, I think this topic that we have, I think I feel like we missed out on talking about movies a little bit, because the biggest like flash in my mind.
This is just specifically on this. Like, there's going to be all kinds of change in the narratives on different movies and characters.
But the Ocean's 11. They tried to do
Oceans. Don't bring Oceans into this. That's its own thing. Stop. That's its own thing, and we can absolutely do a change in the narrative on it. But do not put Oceans anywhere near Uncharted. No, and you know better. We will not sully Uncharted with that mess. No.
Why is it a mess though?
No. Because I'm not talking about the woman one versus anything. I'm talking about them remaking the Rat Pack one.
No. I'm talking about the woman one.
I know what you're talking about, and we're not talking about that here, because that has no place here. That has its own place on another podcast. And
okay.
We will do that. I guarantee you, we will do that. And you can pick when we do that.
Okay.
We will do it. We will get into it. I'm happy to do it, but it doesn't have a place here, because ultimately what we're talking about here is, if we change the narrative on Uncharted with Nathan Drake becoming anything other than a cis white male, would it be as financially successful? Could it inspire passion and a fan base? And could it be a cornerstone of a franchise? Wow, you gonna make all those faces?
Yeah.
Like, all those faces?
I was reacting to the things that you were saying.
Right? So, I think, yes. I think it could. I think it absolutely could. And the reason why I say that is because even though they are not equal, we have seen that the community absolutely will play a female lead badass. We've seen it within a franchise that is a cornerstone for as long, almost, as I can remember being a gamer with Tomb Raider. Okay, back when there wasn't as large of a piece of the community being female, Tomb Raider was financially successful. And even when the reboot came in, it was even more successful. Agreed. And that was with a Lara Croft that did have a deeper background and more emotional things going on and layers going on. So absolutely, I believe that Uncharted with a lead that is anything other than a cis white dude can be financially successful. Can it inspire a loyal fan base? Absolutely. Believe it. Again, I can point at Tomb Raider, but I can also point to Horizon Zero Dawn. The fan base for that is unbelievable. And that is with a lead that, even though there are, and you bring up Panda, I was going to say Panda, but it's going to happen.
It's all right. I will answer to both.
It's 13 years of habit, right? But even with some of those character issues, there are so many young women and girls and grown women who find so much inspiring about that character and her journey through the game. I've never played the game, but I have had many people tell
Actually,
me.
I can't say nothing because my mother-in-law, who doesn't play games at all, was very curious about Horizon Zero Dawn, and my father-in-law bought her a PS4 and that game for her to play it. Granted, she couldn't learn the
You
controls.
know what? But that's okay because accessibility is coming to make things even easier for people to access games. So Lord knows what's coming in Horizon 2, which Horizon 2 is coming, right? But I absolutely believe that if you make Nathan Drake my Nat Drake, which is the example that I gave, I absolutely believe that can have high sales, and I absolutely believe it'll inspire a loyal fan base. I think that you would have even more people in the fan base than you do simply because they would see themselves reflected in the game. I can tell you unbiasedly, I pick up more games when they have lead characters, or if I'm led to believe that they have lead characters or significant characters in them that are Black or women, because there are so few games that I get to see Black women in that aren't just,
True.
bullet couches for whatever reason.
Or I mean, in
See
GTA
things,
5,
right?
they're also
Anyway, keeping it
instruments
moving,
of
we'll have that conversation too, right? And so the final thing is, can it be the cornerstone?
cornerstone. Yes, flagship. I don't know.
I think it absolutely can be a franchise and a
Right
cornerstone.
now,
Absolutely. I absolutely think that Nat Drake in a game that came out right now
well, I
could
mean, right now in the midst of BLM and hey, fix your shit, probably.
but I also mean moving forward, because in addition to all of the things that we've talked about already as far as what's happening in the world and those kinds of things, and we're not going to stop talking about those.
Nope.
There's also sensibilities within the gaming community and the developers. We're already seeing more and more mature, different stories, different voices coming to the environment. Many of them are coming from indie, but guess what? Those indies are starting to turn into larger studios, and larger
I
studios
don't
are starting
understand
to
the
pick
hate
them up.
I don't understand the hate on indie because all the AAA's essentially all started as indies. Like none of them came out of the gate as like fully actualized. Like you always start somewhere, right? So I
You
don't know
always
why
start
there's like this,
somewhere.
oh, it's indie. No.
No,
Indie is the start.
there's some great things that have been coming out of indie for a long time, and now even more so. I mean, that Dragon Cancer, like, you want to start talking about some very
I
rich, very deep.
couldn't even play it.
Okay,
Nope.
and it's a game, but I have a real hard time calling
Now
that
see,
a
would
game.
you call that a game and not an experience?
No, I would call that an experience.
Okay.
It's a deep one. Just like
Okay.
Eve Finch for me
Uh
is an experience, right?
yeah.
It's a deep
But it has nothing to do with our topic. We're
right?
tangenting. We're
So
tangenting.
we do that all the time. And Stets, I agree with you. And let me tell you, there's probably going to be at some point in time one of these podcasts that we do. I might even do like a Wednesday wind down that is specifically just focused on Beyond Good and Evil, because that game is in my top 3 all time best games. And seriously, BG&E 2, I need the release date. But final tangent. So do I think that Nathan Drake, if you change the narrative, can be as successful? Absolutely. I think more so today than 10 years ago. If we were having the same conversation 10 years ago, I would say no. I would say no. I would say that there's really only space for like 3 female protagonists in the community, and then we're at too many, unless it's, a create your own character type game. But if you're
Wait,
giving me
which
your
three are
narrative
we
story,
talking? Samus,
Samus, Lara,
Lara.
and Joanna Dark.
Oh yes, I almost forgot for a hot minute.
I was like, that's it. That's our 3.
Okay.
That's what you get. You can't have no more, right? And so we are at a different place. And because of that, 10-year window, it's because many of us have grown, and we want
I know
deeper
I'm grown. You
stories.
grown. People in this chat most likely grown.
Like, all the jokes aside, like, the things that were interesting to you and the things that resonated with you are very different things 10 years ago than they are today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
And true.
And that should be. And so because the median age of gamers has gotten older, there are different experiences that we want. I don't just want an Airhead experience, whether it's male or female. Give me a
Hey, I loved Lollipop Chainsaw.
look.
I had a fun time with that game.
I love palate cleansers, but not in my narrative.
Too true.
Okay, my
You're
narrative
right.
game should not be a palate cleanser.
I mean, if it is, then you might need to go get some help.
I would suggest that maybe you talk to some people professionally.
Professionally. Good idea. What a great way to end the show.
Like, palate cleansers are different than my narrative games. And in my narrative games, I want a character that I want to emotionally invest in so that I'm willing to put in the time to see their story through, regardless of what the mechanic is. Whether it's, push button because it's like, a telltale walk and talk or click adventure, or it's a platformer action game, whatever the mechanic is, if your story and your characters are good enough, I'll invest in them, and therefore I'll invest in seeing their story through. What I'd like to see is more stories with people like me in them.
Or me.
Or you. Or you. Because there's so many different folks. And that's not to say that there's not a place for cis white dude stories. Because guess what? I love Nathan Drake. I love Nathan Drake as he is.
Well, he retired, so now we need a new one.
All I'm saying is it'd be great if we could have an and
instead of an or.
Just saying. Always and it, never or. There's space for more. And I think the Uncharted universe is a fertile ground, and it's like Naughty Dog already laid the foundation to make space and say, hey, an Uncharted adventure is not just Nathan Drake at the center. An Uncharted adventure can be Chloe and Nadine. It could be Nadine and somebody that we haven't introduced yet. It can be Sam and
an illegitimate son of Sam.
Okay?
Because I'm sure he's got like 4 of them.
We know that Nate had a kid. Okay?
Oh my God, I'd love to see them revitalize it with her all grown up and her wanting to redo her dad's adventures.
Right?
Like, talk about lost legacy. What about the one thing? What if she ended up going back to Shambhala because it's not fully blown up?
There's so many things that you can do with it.
My mind just exploded.
So much space for other voices and other stories. And that's what I think, changing the narrative, at least for me, and its idea was about. So we're going to have more conversations like this. And, I would love to hear, the both of us would love to hear from you guys, if there's something that you want us to explore as far as changing the narrative could be.
Like Metal Gear Solid. That's an idea that I've had.
And it doesn't just, focus on games. Okay, this one focused on games, but there's also movies and TV shows and things like that. Personally, I think Beverly Hills 90210 changes dramatically if you change the look of the cast. And it's
you would just get Degrassi, but in America.
Okay, it wouldn't be Degrassi just in America, but would it have to be Love and Hip Hop? I don't think so. I don't know.
I mean, they attempted to do that with Charmed, because we had Charmed in the 90s with the 3 cis white ladies, and then we just got, I think a couple of years ago, a new Charmed with all Latina ex-ladies, and I don't think that went so well. But it was on the CW.
I didn't hear about it. But the CW is not marketing things well.
I mean, yeah.
Closing out, stats, you are correct. Jade is bae. Jade will always be bae. You, sis, don't know what I'm talking about because you never played Bee Genie, and you really should. And at one point in time, I think the remaster came to Games Pass. I don't think it's still on there, but you might want to check because you want to talk about just powerful, smart, not a damsel in distress, not oversexed, like just witty. I can't.
A girl about the facts.
I can't say enough about that game.
Well, because she's a journalist, right? Okay. Got it.
But we're going to talk more about other narratives and other voices and other representations. And we want to hear from you guys. What are you interested in discussing? And it can just be because we don't know the answer. We work our way through this thing. Once
Yeah.
we start the topic up, I did not have
We're
a
like caterpillars. We build the cocoon, we wiggle in it, and hopefully we come out looking like butterflies, but sometimes we're moths.
like I wasn't sure when we started this conversation today if I was going to end up at a place where I thought that changing the narrative would work or it wouldn't work. And just in our discussion, I have decided I think it absolutely would work, knowing what we know and where we are now versus 10 years ago. But there are other things to discuss and there are other voices to bring up. So hit us up. You can do it on any of our social channels. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Black and Pat. You can private message us if you don't want to put it out there publicly, or message us directly on Facebook. Say, hey, this is something I think you guys, could cover, and I would love to see you guys talk it through. And if you want a shout out when we use your topic, we'll give you a shout out when we do. And if you don't, we'll just say, hey, somebody asked us this, and we'll go about our business and we'll have the conversation. But these are to be conversations. And so I hope that you'll share this with a friend, watch it later in the week if you weren't able to join us live, think about it, and then holler. Let us know. Like, I totally like that, or I really didn't like that, and why? Because we like your feedback, whether we agree with it or not, and whether you agree with us or not. Those are the things that we get to have as people, but we want that feedback so that we know like what's interesting to you guys to talk about and what's not, because we want to talk about things that are interesting. We can keep
We
the stuff
want you
that's
to
not
like
interesting.
us.
No, I mean I want you to follow me. I don't
Well,
need you to like
no.
me.
I want you to respect me more than like me,
There
I
you go.
guess.
Okay, I want you to follow us on Twitch. So hit the purple little follow button. It's just right there. It's just right there. Just follow it.
Little
Because
heart.
we're so close to 50. We need 5 more follows. And then we'll do it. But hit us up on our social. Let us know if there's something that you'd like us to discuss, whether it's in video games, anime, music, movies, TV shows. And we do count streamings as TV shows because at some point in time, I'm absolutely going to want to have a tribunal where we simply just discuss the old guard because I have lots of thoughts and questions and I need to get them out some way. Maybe I'll do it as a Wednesday wind down because I
I'd
don't
love for us to talk about the raising of Dion.
yeah, so like we have to do that. And
Yeah.
also, fast color is another one that we need to talk about. We have so many things to talk about. But thank you so much for joining us today as we talk through all of this stuff, and know that we appreciate the community that is here, that is supporting us, that is very, very heartwarming for us to, be this far in and have mostly figured out our tech now, and
Just
to
just about.
actually see you guys coming through on our social channels and sharing the love and all those kinds of things. We are going to be bringing even more stuff to the plate, but for now, it's time to say goodbye. Just remember, always and.
Never or.
Until next time.